Hello, my name is Nezumi, and in this video I'll show you how to make the makeshift knife from Shadow of the Tomb Raider. I made the pattern on Adobe Illustrator and printed that out, and then I traced it on a 10mm craft foam and I cut that out. And you can use a craft foam hole punch to cut that hole out in the center. Next, I took some wire and twisted it together, and we'll place this inside the foam. To do this, cut 2 shallow cuts making a V shape, and you can take out that craft foam, just don't cut all the way through. I also did this to the handle as well, and then you can just hot glue the wire in. Then you can glue the 2 sides together with contact cement. Apply the contact cement and let it dry before sticking them together. Then carefully align them together. I put a Sharpie in the hole so that way the holes would line up and I wouldn't have to fix that later. Then you can take a box cutter and start carving down the sides to make it to a point. And you always want to use a sharp blade to cut through foam. Then I took a Dremel and started sanding down the edges. And I made sure to wear a respirator, and I also have a vacuum nearby to clean up the dust. And then using a high grit sandpaper, you can sand down the edges to make them even smoother and get rid of the tiny sanding dust. And I took my Dremel with a rounded tip and I started dremeling in a bunch of dents and wear into the knife. And finally, you can take a heat gun and lightly heat up the foam. This will seal it and also get rid of any more of that tiny foam dust. To seal it, I gave it a few coats of Plasti-Dip. Then I gave it a coat of silver spray paint, but I wasn't really happy with it, so I went over it with silver rub and buff. And I just applied little amounts at a time with an old sock. For the rust, you can totally buy textured and rust-like paints, but I didn't want to spend any more money on this costume, so I made my own. I just mixed up a rusty color red, and then I took sand from my backyard and mixed it in for the texture. And then I stippled the paint on, trying my best to match the reference photos. The serial number was made in Adobe Illustrator, and then I printed it out on some thick paper. And using Mod Podge, I glued it onto 1mm craft foam and also covered the paper as well once it was dried. The entire number wasn't legible in the reference photo, so I snuck in an LC for Lara Croft. Once it was completely dried, I could cut it out. Using my original pattern, I traced along where I needed to remove the bottom edge. And using tinfoil, I smushed it onto the plate to add texture. And then I super glued on small plastic washers. Now that the knife was dry, I went over it with a wash of watered down brown acrylic paint. Apply it liberally, let it seep into the cracks, and then dab off the excess with a paper towel. This is a super easy way to weather and add detail to your props. I did the same thing to the cereal plate, but with black acrylic paint instead. And to add some dirt and grime, I went over some parts with brown paint as well. And I painted the edges black to make sure the paper wouldn't be seen. And then I could dry brush some silver paint on top of the washers, as well as some silver paint here and there to make it look like it's been scratched. And here's the cereal plate up close. And then I super glued it onto the knife. And then I did a little bit more weathering around the plate onto the knife. Then I gave the knife a few coats of satin spray varnish, and then taking a gel matte medium, I stippled onto only the rust parts to make them matte again. And I added a little bit on top of the cereal plate as well, just to add some texture to the grime. And here you can see how the rust and parts of the plate are matte and the rest is shiny. And then I wrapped the ends in silver duct tape, making sure to add a few wrinkles here and there. Then I wrapped it in leather cord. Off screen I wrapped it in paracord because it was really awkward to try and make sure it looped and knotted just like the photo. But since I could only find black paracord, I dry brushed it with a green paint to make it match the reference image. And here's what the finished knife looked like. Thank you so much for watching, and if you check out how I made the bow, in that video I show you how I make the sheath for the knife as well. Please subscribe, like, and follow for more.